Welcome to the fifth episode of What's Trending with myself and Nolan. This episode, we're going to talk about Take Two, Sprouts Farmers Market, Simply Better Brands, which is the owner of True Bar, and VF Corporation. There's been a lot happening, both macro and non macro, which we'll talk about with these businesses. But I'm really excited to talk about these because they're kind of all in different sectors, all relate to different things, and have some form of catalyst attached to each one of them. So I think there will be a lot that we'll cover and give you a good starting point to possibly do more research into some of these businesses. But yeah, so how have you been doing, Nolan?
Doing all right. I'll try to keep the baby update short. We're now 5 weeks out, so 37 days. But made the storage unit run and feeling all right. Was able to find some stuff. So boy number two will hopefully be here healthy at some point. But things are going well. Glad to see a little less. I mean, I left last week's call kind of doing a little bit more soul searching in terms of what's going on with the market, kind of where I was exposed. Did some trimming myself. Was still there to able to ride some of the bounce that happened, vast majority of it. So I feel pretty lucky, but I still kind of feel like I'm guessing more than I'm kind of knowing what I'm doing as far as what I'm trying to here. But again, trying to focus on, there's lots of things moving that alternative data can be measuring, trying to keep my focus there and being confident that that's going to be a direction that's going to help me in the long run. And, but yeah, so again, let's dive in. Even going through the four companies we had in mind in the beginning,
Yeah.
got my ideas going a little bit. And so, yeah, let's take it away, Adrien.
Yeah, I'll add to that as well. I think that we've had this question too, which is I think some people can get stuck with the view of social arb or alternative data in a situation like this because they might think that everything is more macro focused, and so maybe there's less of an opportunity in data. Something that we've been saying on Twitter with ticker trends a little bit is we've been saying that times like this are the situations that cause a lot of consumer change. And I think regardless of what ends up ultimately happening with, either there are tariffs forever, they're not tariffs, new policy, anything that happens, the one thing that is going to change is there's going to be some level of change in consumer sentiment or opinion on which products or services they want to buy. So I think those are the things that's going to make it really interesting. I mean, let alone, let's just say, if the only thing that ends up changing out of this is low cost Chinese goods can no longer be imported to the US, that would still have a massive change in what consumers purchase. So I think actually this is one of the times where tracking data and looking at consumer change, especially when the market is so focused on macro, will present some really exciting opportunities to be able to find the things that consumers end up positioning themselves into following all this uncertainty and volatility that goes into the market. So I just wanted to start with that. And I think one perfect one that we can jump into relating to kind of having this changing consumer environment is Take Two Interactive. The two things I'll start us with is they did have some recent strong NBA 2K or 2K sports game launches. And so that's propelled them a little bit in the shorter term in terms of a little bit stronger than expected results. But then there's also this looming catalyst of the GTA 6 launch, which has allowed Take Two to really be very uncorrelated from markets, just because it has no tariff impacts, but also the business has all these big catalysts coming up with this massive game launch. And there's been a lot of discussion around some of what the launch plans for GTA 6 will be. Something that is a common sentiment within the market right now is that GTA 6 and Switch 2 combined together is going to kind of turn around the gaming industry. So there's been a lot of optimism around that. But I am very excited to continue to see more information released about the game. Something that people are already talking about is some of the pricing, potential pricing for the game being higher at above the regular $60 gaming price level, where it might be somewhere 100 or even more for GTA 6, and consumers are actually not upset about that. So I think that's a really big positive for the game. And then the second thing would be what Nolan's showing on the screen right now as well, is the trailer to, which again, typically you might say, well, consumers might be upset that trailer 2 is delayed or that the price is above $100. But in this case, I would say that consumers are almost showing that they don't care that the second trailer hasn't released, and they don't care that the price is going to be above $100, and they're still really excited for the game and to purchase the game. Yeah, so those are some of my starting thoughts on Take-Two and GTA 6.
Yeah, I know you and I, when again, I was admitting to, followed it pretty closely in the past, but it's kind of gotten desensitized a little bit to the news on GTA. When's it finally coming? And you said, oh, it's fall. So it's like, okay, it's actually fall. I probably should get my head wrapped around this one again. So this is a good example of, again, it's still the main guru I'd say that I keep an eye on is Chris Camillo in terms of like this prepared mindset. I do think there's something here where some of this noise, the distraction, what's going on, there could be some really juicy setups. Again, maybe a little of a cringe term to say it that way, but some good setups here that paying some attention, if it has the impact that we think it could have as far as being a culture driver, it's going to be an interesting one for the company. Again, we know it's not just one there alone. They've got several different brands that they're under. That's not just one thing, but I think during the next 2 quarters, it's going to be the news that pertains to this. It's going to be the main driver for it. So it's interesting to keep an eye on. It's going to be pretty high on my list. Again, the buzz is happening. You can see like the GTA 6 type turn is, again, people aren't searching it for it with the IV terms or as one word. So it really is the GTA and 6. The price volume is like, you can definitely start to see that this is like becoming a driver around price. I'll just remove some of these ones, you can see it. But yeah, people are interested in it. There's going to be demand. And again, if they put the price tag at 200, I'm sure they'd sell a ton. So they're going to try to do something that's just not going to get them too much blowback. But also, I think people understand how much development work went into this, where I think they're eager to have a product that hopefully is more usable than Cyberpunk was out the gate.
Yes. And I think the thing around pricing, like you mentioned, will be interesting because we even see games. I think a really good example of this was what you mentioned earlier about Super Mario or Mario Kart. Mario Kart for Switch 2 is already being priced at I think $80 or $100 for an open world Mario Kart game on Switch 2. And already with that, consumers are not too upset about it. And to be fair, that's a far smaller game than GTA 6. So I think this is setting the stage for an environment where consumers will not be too upset or have maybe even any level of blowback for this higher pricing. And it gives Take-Two a lot of flexibility to determine where they want to stand on that and how aggressive they want to be in looking at that pricing flexibility that they could have, especially right off the gate, because I do expect that there will also be even more of a premium to purchase it right away when it launches. And I do think that people would be willing to pay that to get it sooner rather than waiting for the discounts which come later. Something else I wanted to show, which I thought was interesting, was what I was mentioning about 2K. 2K, their franchise around that, has also been very strong with some of the recent releases. And what I was looking at is even after their recent report period, which ended in December, some of the web traffic interest in 2K has just been phenomenal. So I think they might have a situation here where not only are their existing releases doing really well, but then potentially they could blow things out of the water with GTA 6, which to some extent I think the market is very optimistic about GTA 6, but it could be a much larger cultural enigma than people expect. So I'll be very interested to see that play out. And as we get closer to the GTA 6 launch, I think it's something to watch, and it's also a company that's, I would consider, one of the tariff resistant in terms of price action. And it might have a little bit of market correlation, but it'll probably keep staying in its own, it might still have its own market moves, which are less related to the broader market. But beyond Take-Two, one that we were discussing is Sprouts Farmers Market, which is another business which has been relatively tariff resistant, and a really interesting one because it's such high growth. I guess, Nolan, you could start off with a little bit of background on Sprouts and what they're doing.
Yeah, again, when you first mentioned it, as far as kind of some ideas, I wasn't too familiar, so I spent a little bit of time poking around. I mean, I'm in Boston, so kind of makes sense. The nearest one, I don't know if I'm talking a drive to Jersey or where I'm going, but there's not any around here. But it is clear that there's again, I just popped it into ChatGPT. It showed some pretty good like same store growth. So there's something that's actually underlying. The same stores are growing, they're adding. You can see here, this coming soons are pretty good. So they've got some good traction here. But you said there's probably a double edge in terms of just people eating more healthy, more aware of organic and local and things like that. So I know my wife has done it. She thinks she's like really sticking it to Bezos by not buying as much from Whole Foods. Whole Foods is the one that's closest to us. Do get the 5% discount with my Amazon card. So, but I don't know how much there is an element of, and I haven't assessed this, of like people looking for an alternative to Whole Foods. I don't know if this is something that's playing out there as well, but I know people are mindful of the role of the billionaire in the year 2025. So I don't know if Sprouts is kind of positioned itself as something that's different and alternative, but Whole Foods used to have this really pristine brand, and obviously it's a very different one nowadays. So still strong, no political statements made, but it's an interesting one where, again, I know you had some other parts of the thesis too that I'll let you kind of layer in.
Yes. I mean, this is a very strong consumer grocery brand, and it's been having a lot of growth because of some of what you're mentioning, the same store sales growth, and then also new locations opening. This is an interesting term. This is Sprouts Near Me, which has just been it's been growing exceptionally well. And then you layer on another element of it, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, which is the question of tariff impacts and how much will this impact the brand. And Sprouts is one of these brands which does try to source more from the U.S. Than outside the U.S. And so this positions Sprouts far better than many other businesses, and especially when you look at I was looking at some of the dollar store brands, which could be interesting in a weaker consumer environment. And when you look at those brands, many of them do import from foreign countries and are heavily impacted by tariffs. But then you have some like Dollar General, which kind of claim from the very beginning in their business guidelines or how they operate their business that they source primarily from the U.S. And Dollar General has been one of the dollar stores which has stood out in terms of stronger performance compared to any of the other dollar store brands. And so with Sprouts having a similar mindset in terms of pre-tariffs prioritizing U.S. goods and making that a part of their strategy, it sets them up really well for this tariff environment. So if they can continue that with a consumer staple mindset, being where even if there's kind of a recession with consumers, people will still buy groceries. They still are kind of health focused. And if Sprouts is sourcing from the US, then these are all things that could really help them in the short term continue to outperform the broader market. Now, the one risk that I think still stands is there's always this element of going into these periods of uncertainty, how management communicates them. And Sprouts is a business which, when you look at the price action of this company, I mean, it's been skyrocketing over the past couple years. And so the market does want perfect execution from them. And if there is some uncertainty that management gives in their call, then that would probably spook the market. So I think there's a balance here of saying this is a company that has the chance to perform really well and continue to be a standout performer in the grocer space. But if the execution is not there, or if management doesn't know how to communicate properly to fend off the uncertainty, then when you go into a company like this, which is priced for perfection and priced for growth, if they show any sign of that slowing, then the market could get really scared. So that's where I think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, but it's an interesting one because it has those tailwinds of like the health and wellness trends and people wanting to eat healthier, so they'd be shopping at Sprouts Farmers Market. In terms of the next business we'll go into, this is a far smaller cap business, which is really interesting, kind of a pure play into a protein bar brand. This is Simply Better Brands. And maybe, Nolan, you can talk a little bit about what this company is kind of focused on in terms of their longer term strategy and what they're doing there.
Yeah, it's a space I know somewhat well. I've had several clients along the road that have tried to come up with some kind of bar here. Let me just get the right tab going. But yeah, let's do it here. But like, again, I always like to start off by, I wasn't too familiar with it as we were chatting about it, but again, it's one area that I know pretty well with RX Bar. I mean, a while back, RX Bar, I mean, feels recent for me, but now I'm sure it's 6-7 years when RX Bar was acquired. I think they were acquired by Kellogg in a big acquisition. That was several times their overall sales had ever done in the history of the brand. So it is one, when you start to have good traction with a bar, there's loyalty around it. Again, it's most commonly spelled with one word here, but you were saying it's got good traction on Amazon. So again, that's kind of some of my sweet spots of kind of clients I've worked with that have done well on Amazon. So it's something I wasn't too familiar with. I'm gonna dive in deeper here, but I always like to get a lay of who they're competing with. Then you start throwing some of these terms into Google Trends compared to each other. You can start having some interesting overlapping. But you said it does seem like it's a company that's positioning itself for acquisition. I mean, you got to be, as far as if you're a direct-to-consumer brand like this. I won't name some brands, but I named some that are interesting in this space. That's what they're really going after, and it's interesting as far as from the advertising perspective, kind of what your goals are different. It's not necessarily the ratio of how much you're spending to how much revenue you're driving with the profit there. You really are trying to push on sales, push on new customers, try to show loyalty. And it seems like there does seem to be some pretty good traction. I was just skimming through some reviews, so I'll stop my screen share, start bringing up the Amazon side of things. But I know you had a few dashboard things to share as well on this.
Yes. Yes, I think what's interesting about Simply Better Brands is like you discussed, they're positioning themselves for an exit. It's very directly stated in their strategy and what they're trying to do, which I kind of like. I think it's good to have a business which knows what strategy it's going for, and then they can best position themselves all around for that outcome and maximizing that outcome. I know they've attracted a lot of people who also have a lot of experience in achieving these outcomes of sales to these large DTC brands. So I have no doubt that they pretty much will get acquired. But then the question is just how well can they do pre-acquisition in terms of strategy. And so far, just looking at some of the Amazon interest in True Bar, which is the protein bar that they are focused on, the performance has been exceptional, and they just came out with some results for March, which was their record milestone of 1.2 million in monthly direct consumer sales in March 2025, and they referenced that Amazon is one of their primary distribution channels. So I think this is a company that is clearly executing pretty well in terms of achieving exactly what you described of maximizing consumer loyalty and just acquiring new customers, and then going a million miles an hour trying to get that acquisition. So if people are looking for a smaller cap business which has some interesting prospects going for it, I think Simply Better Brands is definitely one to start to look into. And there is a quite a large or growing community on Twitter of people who are aware of this business and who are really fascinated by it. So I kind of think this could be similar to something, a company that we talked about a while ago, Lifeway Brands, which was a little bit different. They weren't necessarily positioning themselves for an acquisition, but they ended up getting an acquisition offer, and that's caused some drama within the business. But I think this is similar, where you have a company with a product that's doing so well that the acquisition is almost inevitable, and this business is set up much better than Lifeway to handle that acquisition situation, which could fare pretty well for investors, assuming you think they're going to continue to grow and be able to market that growth to one of the potential acquirers in the future.
Yeah, let me share my screen. I've been clicking away pretty. Because you got that. So let me stop sharing. Share this tab instead. I mean, it's been interesting. Even just like looking at these other companies have got me interested as well. Like some Perfect Bar is what my wife's go-to. Again, she's 8 months pregnant here, so she's got her calories in. Perfect Bar is one. But I'll go to the actual Google Trends one here. I'll share this tab instead. So we'll get used to driving this a little bit. But like Perfect Bar, again, it's growing, but nothing crazy. You have True Bars, and probably I should be take extra time to do with a space in between it. Probably people do spell it with it as you would spell the word true. But you can see in blue, it's rising. This IQ Bars is really interesting to me, even just like as diving around here, because they are Boston located, they're a private company. Interesting space. When you do get traction and you do have loyalty, people, it's an area you're going to auto ship. You're going to get something that's you want to try new things once in a while, but you want to have a trusted brand you go to. And that's what these are all after, as far as how do you get to that area. And then again, whether it's done through the platform of Amazon, or if you can do it fully direct to consumer through probably a Shopify site, it's going to be interesting. So again, I like these ones. These ones kind of are overlap with my career as well as, and this is where I'm really after, trying to figure out these battles that are going. And again, there's probably a big enough space where it's not one has to beat the other. Where again, my Genesis story is really seeing like, okay, it's people searching the word Shopify platform versus Magento platform, and you know that there's probably gonna be one big winner. And sure enough, there was. It was Shopify. So again, there's areas where these battles go on. You can use search volume as a measure, but that's one of the ones. I know your platform does a good job of showing that there's lots of battles with Reddit type terms of like, let me share this tab instead. But like, yeah, so it's again, lots of spaces going on here to figure out what's the opinion. So what's the quantity of opinions, and then where can you start to distill some sentiment on what's kind of coming to the top. But it does seem to be a brand that's been pretty popular as I just thumb through normal things that I do in terms of like TrueBar, then the word versus, then throw the word Reddit, and then I start to read a few posts, things like that, to try to get an understanding of what's the, not just what's the most popular reviews on Amazon, but what is kind of what's gone in on kind of what is the consensus going on here. So, but I can stop the screen there. But interesting one I will definitely go deeper on myself.
Yes. I think it's like a mix of RX Bar and like Celsius and Alani. Where you have like these disruptive workout, maybe more unisex brands, which do really well. So, I mean, yeah, when you look even at the packaging and the branding of it, I think you could automatically see that it's a product that could do well. So I'm very interested to see how that company can execute. And since it's such a small business, the price action is also still very uncorrelated from the broader market as well.
Yeah, we can go to the next one. I just want to show. I mean, this looks at 600 million, and it was quite a ways ago now, so it's nothing that recent when RX Bars was acquired. But it was a big buzz, I remember, in the space when it happened. But it'll be interesting to see kind of their trajectory and how they. Somebody's gonna be interested in it. So,
yes.
But I know we want to wrap it up with the last one here.
Yes, the last one we can get into is VFC Corporation. I think this ties into some of the tariff talk. I'll jump into it a little bit. So VFC Corporation, I think it's interesting because if you do a little bit of research on their strategy recently, they've been working on this turnaround for quite a while now. That's why they divested Supreme, and they've been trying to rebrand and reinvigorate some of their brands like Vans. On the screen, I'm showing some of the data for Vans, so you can see that it's starting to kind of recover year over year in terms of potentially soon entering more of a growth territory. But you combine this where you have this company was struggling and trying to turn around, and then now it gets hit with being a producer in one of the countries that's most attacked by the tariffs, which is Vietnam. So this puts the company in a really difficult position, and that's why the price action has reflected that. I think the two interesting things about this business is that it was trying to turn around before this, and now it's the price action is kind of taking that away as it could potentially go out of business again. But something that I thought was interesting is there is still kind of this factor that the tariffs might not impact everyone or potentially last forever. So, I mean, either if the tariffs don't last forever, that could be a case where this business could do well, or the other case could be Trump has already said that he might exempt specific companies from the tariffs. He said if there are American companies that would be heavily impacted, he might exempt them. And he actually did this in his last administration as well. I was mentioning one that I saw recently was Primo Water, which is the producer of Saratoga Water, which went viral recently. Back in 2018 or 2019, Trump exempt them from the tariffs in China. And that's a similar case where you have a company that's like, let's say, a very American company or an employer of many people. And in my mind, what I was telling Nolan before the video is, I think if someone went to Trump and said, hey, the producer of Vans, which is an American company, is going to go out of business if you don't exempt them. I think he is the type of person that would automatically exempt them from the tariffs if he heard that concern, right? So I think there is a position here potentially where just by the nature of kind of how Trump acts on these things, if he were to hear that something like this was struggling, he might be willing to give the exemption to them, and then it would kind of just gap up and price out that risk of potentially going out of business, which could be interesting. Obviously, the situation could be more complex than that, but I think it's just one of the things that could go into making this interesting when it's combined with some of the turnaround that the management has been trying to do. But yeah, what are some of your thoughts on VFC?
Let me share my screen on a few of them. Keep going. Yeah, there we go. But yeah, so I guess I know you and I connected. There's been some traction with a few different shoes. I know last year was the old. You're not referring to the old school. I know that one was popular last year, and I'll share the other view here.
Vans has also launched some new. Yes, I think it's the school shoes. They look a little bit like the Adidas silhouette or something like that. They've really changed some of their design and tried to make it exciting.
Yeah, so there's definitely. I mean, there was buzz this time last year. I know it's been a tough year for. I mean, I guess I haven't looked at the exact price action. I know they've had a tough, larger view, but it is an interesting one. And again, zooming back out, it's just kind of what is VF Corp. It is an element of. Let me share this tab instead. But again, they've got obviously a long list of brands that we've been keeping an eye on for different perspective. Talking about jackets before, kind of warm weather things. So we got a lot of underlayers for skiing related stuff. So they've got a lot of brands, but obviously Vans is. I think I should have asked ChatGPT what the percentage is for Vans, but I know they kind of go as Vans goes, is my understanding. But it's an interesting one here again, as we're trying to come up with a list of things, again, back to the prepared mindset, back to what Chris would say in terms of, I know we spent a lot of time in humanoid land, but it's still being prepared about what's going on next. And I do think if some of these real concerns, as this market is definitely trading off of truth social tweets more than it's trading off of buzz around a new line for a top brand. But I do think it's important to, at least I'm trying to keep myself focused on where is there brands that are seeing good traction, that has something kind of brewing underneath that show something good here. And then like be ready to go when it sounds like I'm still exposed, probably been overexposed the last month and a half, or I can remove the word probably and say I wish I'd found some kind of way to hedge myself in certain ways, but they've had good buzz on this Vans old school thing last year. Again, I'll be curious if it's going to be a kind of a tough comp too. So there's an element of a little bit of fear. I'm kind of curious. I don't know if search volume is there or not, but what other sources were you looking at to see the buzz for Vans in particular, Adrien, on?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I would agree generally. I think it's, I was primarily, I just showed a little bit of the web traffic and search interest recovering year over year, but I definitely think the Vans Low Pro, which you were showing on that Google Trends chart as well, is interesting. I think when you look at products like this, it shows that they're willing to change some of their strategy and innovate with new things. And just looking at what type of shoes have been popular. This launched in March of this year, the Vans Low Pro. This is a product that shows that they're on the right track, in my opinion. And this is something that could do really well if they market it properly. And so this is kind of what made me most excited as well. I will say that the social traction or interest in the brands overall hasn't been like mind-blowing at all yet. But I guess I'm still looking at the potential future strategy, right? And like, can they continue to slowly chip away at it and get it on the right track? So then I think that's where the opportunity could come in.
Yeah, I mean, here's the combining queries with the word low pro as one word. I think as their marketing, it probably should also do one that includes it as two separate words. And then if it's got the word silhouette, to kind of a few areas there. But you can see there's buzz about it. And even this is just anything with the word Vans and new. I do this a lot for whenever I'm assessing fashion lines that, again, I really like investing in shoe companies. I still have a position in On. I've had a position in Deckers. One that I've trimmed. I wish I kind of jumped out faster there. But like, again, I want to see the buzz around the word new. Because that is an element of, probably those are more often the loyal shopper, person that's loyal to the brand doing that query. So it's a demonstration of how much of the underlying loyal customer base growing, because really shoes are in many ways a subscription, even if you're not necessarily subscribing from directly. Ideally, it's a brand that you're going, I mean, if you're doing heel kicks or whatever as a skater, you're going to need to get it pretty often. And same thing if you're running marathons, you need new hokas every so often too. So it's a really interesting space. If you have good loyalty, it's a brand. It's a really great business. But obviously, when you throw in the amount of uncertainty around tariffs, that's a tricky spot to be. That said, it's one that I really like to keep an eye on. It plays well into my expertise as well here. But there's definitely some buzz, and we'll see what happens. I always like to see this initial like spark, and sparks that are like this become something that could be much bigger. So I think this is a good one. That's, again, as you and I were talking about, what's our aim of what we're doing here? It is to try to come up with expanding people's ideas. Again, it's easier for me to bring up my Robinhood account and see what I'm down in a day, but it's energizing and charging to kind of say, hey, there's still underlying demand. There's something that's going to come out of this, and hopefully we find something to hopefully share a value to kind of hopefully spark some ideas. Hopefully you can throw ideas our ways. And again, in the comments section, feel free to share your thoughts. If there's any companies you want us to look at, I know I've relied on Adrien to come up with the list here, but keep us posted if there are companies. I don't know if there's anything else you want to wrap us up here, Adrien, on VF Corp before we say goodbye, and we'll see what happens in the next 6 or 7 days here.
No, I think that was a great way to wrap it. Yeah, like you said, just giving these ideas, giving starting points to dig deeper, and give an overview into something that might look like an uncertain market, but pointing out the opportunities, or just thinking outside the box a little bit in terms of showing that not everything is just a macro traded market, and there are still business opportunities going on. So yeah, that's what I hope to continue to deliver as we make these weekly episodes, and I'm really excited to see what list of companies we talk about next week. And I agree, definitely give suggestions in the comments or in Discord, on Twitter, anywhere. And those are the brands that we'll talk about next week. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching.
Awesome. Thanks, Adrien. Thanks, guys.